With the release of Creed 3, we now have 9 movies in the Rocky/Creed franchise, so let's rank them. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a good one today. I'm the movie ranker, and today I'm going to be ranking all 9 Rocky/Creed movies from worst to best. You know, probably easily the biggest sports franchise of all time. Rocky's such a great character. You know, the first movie is almost 50 years old and it's still being celebrated today. Just goes to show. A very consistent franchise, not too many stinkers in there, but we're going to get into that. Just make sure to follow me on Letterboxd and Instagram. Links to those are in the description of this video. And make sure you drop your own rankings in the comment section. Without wasting any more time, let's dive in. So for me, coming in the last place at number 9, I gotta give it to Rocky 5. Now, this is not necessarily a bad movie, it's just heavily flawed and just happens to be the worst in the franchise for me. But this is such a good franchise, that's not saying much. I don't know, all the characters just feel kind of off here, especially Rocky himself. He's kind of over the top and a little cartoonishy, the way he's talking and his dialogue and that. Not a big fan of that. Cool to see his actual son in here playing Rocky's son. That's pretty cool. And you know, once Rocky starts training Tommy Gunn, his son gets jealous because he's spending more time with Tommy than him. It's a familiar story. We've seen this type of thing before, but it's still interesting enough. And you know, Tommy makes Rocky feel alive again, makes him feel like he's winning again. And we get this great speech to set Rocky straight out on the streets with Adrian and Rocky. And Adrian just lets it all out, saying, you're going to lose your family, you're losing your son over Tommy, and Tommy lacks heart. And it just makes for such a great moment. We also get a great Mickey flashback in here. We get the best version of Paulie ever. This is the nicest he's ever going to be. He defends Rocky at the end at the bar. He helps train his son when Rocky's too busy with Tommy. You know, he's helping Rocky's son develop some self-defense, I guess, techniques, and helping out with the punching bag and stuff. It's cool that Paulie's helping out, and yeah, I have to hand it to him. My favorite version of the character. And the way the movie starts with Rocky's hand shaking after events of Rocky 4 after fighting Drago, you know, and him going to see the doctor and find out he has brain damage and it's irreversible, it's permanent. It's really emotional, it's sad, it hits hard. Unfortunately, I feel like it's kind of not really dealt with. It's kind of dropped for the rest of the movie, you know. Of course, Rocky ain't going to be fighting anymore in the ring, but I don't know, I just wish they would have tapped a little bit more into that, because that was really interesting. But yeah, I hate the damn promoter in this one. He's annoying as hell. I can't stand him. It's weird to see Rocky go this low in the 5th entry. You know, he's back in the slums. He's almost in worse shape than what he was in the first film. And it's just very odd after seeing him kind of climb and, you know, grow over these films. I mean, the street fight at the end is pretty cool, but it is kind of cheesy. And I just much prefer an actual ring fight, especially like a title match or whatnot. It's okay, though. And I do appreciate that this movie didn't just do a rehash of what came before. It definitely went in a different direction. It's just that the execution wasn't the best. Up next at number 8, I got the brand new Creed 3. Now, this one was directed by Michael B. Jordan, his first film he's ever done, and I think he did a great job. You know, it's not easy acting as your main lead and directing a film that you're in. No easy task, but I feel like he did a great job in the directing chair. I really loved Jonathan Majors as Damien. He was so hyped up in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania Part 3 that when I watched it, I was like, he's okay, but I don't think he's one of the best villains I've ever seen or anything. But in here, I was really surprised, and I think he did even better job in Creed 3 than he did in Ant-Man 3. I'm like, damn, I actually really dug this character. I like that he was dirty. We never really seen that in this franchise before, you know, like elbowing and trying to throw in some dirty moves while he's fighting. And, you know, coming from the crime gang and stuff, you know, having guns on him, and he's dangerous in a different type of way, and I like that about this character. Even though he has a really odd fighting stance, just the way he kind of has no control, right? And it's interesting that his story is kind of a twist, underdog story twist on the original, because the original was obviously Rocky got a chance at the title being a nobody. This one is kind of the same thing, except that nobody, Damien, is not the best person. Rocky's such a kind-hearted and all that type of person, where this Damien is not like that. He's ruthless. He's dangerous. He's dirty, and it's kind of interesting seeing the different side of the coin with this entry. And Damien and Adonis know each other from their childhood, and there's an event that happened back then which, ended up making Damien go to prison for 18 years, losing his chance of becoming this great boxer and all that. He feels Adonis, kind of stole his life from him, which is really interesting. But I feel like they dwell on that childhood past for way too long. They go back to flashbacks like a million times in this little 5-minute event, and they kind of try to spoon feed you what actually happened, and you can pretty much figure it out before it's told. The movie can be very predictable at times on how things are going to play out as well. I feel like the heartfelt moments feel a little more superficial this time around, and there's no Rocky, which, does leave a big gaping hole in this film. And I definitely wasn't a fan of the final fight in here. It was way more style over substance, I don't like how there was like smoke, and like the ring became like a jail cell, and it's all very stylized. But I just wanted to see a great, heartfelt, emotional fight, which we didn't really get. One of the worst fights in the franchise, in my opinion. I mean, it's not a total loss. It's completely watchable, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed after watching it. Coming in at number 7, and this may be my first hot take, is Rocky 2. Was never the biggest fan of this sequel. I just find the first act moves a bit too slow for me. It's a bit too dull. I feel like the drama just isn't as captivating or as interesting to me anyways. I especially feel that when you're marathoning these movies, watching all the Rockies. This one I find kind of slows down a little too much in the first half. And Rocky gets dumbed down a little too much as well. Don't like the dialogue in that they give him. He's a bit more annoying with his ramblings and stories and that. And yeah, he's still likable, but I mean, he just feels a little off from the first film. Ironically enough, the movie seems to pick up when Adrian falls into a coma. And we get that great emotional, heartfelt moment with Rocky, saying, she's just sleeping. And you get that little speech from him. And that's when the movie starts to pick up for me. Adrian becomes Rocky's priority. He doesn't care about the fight or the training or anything at this point. All he thinks about is his wife. And I love how Mickey is supporting him. Get that great scene where they're both in the chapel, and he's basically like, I'll be by your side the whole time if that's what you want. And yeah, it just really makes their bond so much more. And of course, when Adrian does wake up and tells Rocky to win, this puts him back on track. We had some great training montages. We get that great shot of him running up the stairs with all the kids chasing him this time. Great shot. Of course, Rocky learning new techniques, learning to fight with his right, so he's kind of a hybrid now. He can use both hands and chasing the chickens, all that great stuff. It's very entertaining. And we get this really kick-ass final fight against Apollo, the rematch. It goes all the way down to the count. It's just very emotional, very thrilling. I'm always on the edge of my seat. And Apollo, he's much more serious and determined this time. He wants to prove that it was just a fluke in the first movie what happened. And yeah, it just makes for a great finale. It's a good movie. It's just the first half drags a bit. Coming up next, at number 6, I got the movie Creed. Now this one does a pretty good job at transitioning from the Rocky franchise to the Creed franchise. It kind of connects both in a pretty great way. And, it's basically a much better version of part 5, because we see Rocky as a mentor again with Adonis this time. Adonis Creed goes by Johnson for a while until it's revealed, and I really like that about him. Doesn't want to use his family name to get farther in life. He wants to prove that it had nothing to do with genetics or his family ties or nothing. He did this all on his own, and that's great. And you get that great line from him near the end where he tells Rocky, I want to prove that I'm not a mistake. And That's the emotional punch in this film. And the other really emotional scene for me in here is with Rocky finding out he has cancer. And he's so mixed on the fact because he knows Adrian lost her battle with cancer, so he's thinking in his head, this is a battle he cannot win. It's stirring things up inside of him, and I love that Adonis is there to support him, and they support each other. Adonis supporting Rocky into getting his treatment and to getting better, while Rocky supports him and training him for his next big fight, and it just makes their bond all that much better. And I really love the first fight that we see Adonis in. The way it's filmed is so cool. It's like this 360 camera that's like going around the fighters, and you can see the punches, and it makes you feel like you're there. You're there in the moment with them in the fight. It's a shot really cool. Unfortunately, the final fight I think is just okay. I much prefer this middle fight. It's just filmed really cool. As with all these Creed movies, I feel like the romance between Bianca and Adonis is okay, but it's definitely nowhere near as motivating or captivating as Adrian and Rocky. Those two, they had the perfect romance. Here it's a bit more generic, but it's serviceable, I guess. But one thing I just thought was so stupid and ridiculous was the training scene with Adonis jogging down the street being followed by all these bikes and quads and that, and it's just like, I don't know, this felt really dumb and cheesy to me. Especially with Rocky looking out the window and being like, yeah, I'm just like, why? Who thought this was a good idea? That is not the type of training montage I like in these films, but it's a good movie. It has a few flaws, few things keeping it higher in my list, but I do enjoy it. Up next at number 5, I got Creed 2. Now, this one is so tight with the original Creed. I kept going back and forth which one to put 5th and which one to put 6th, but ultimately I landed on Creed 2 being a tiny bit better, in my opinion. Just does such a great job at showing us the aftermath of Rocky 4. Not the Rocky side of things, but Ivan Drago side of things, and what happened to him after the fight, and how he lost respect, and he lost his country and even his wife. And now he's training his son to try to get back in, if he can prove himself, my son, maybe we can be accepted back into Russia and with my wife and all that stuff. It's just very interesting to me. And this all leads to the final fight where Ivan Drago saves his son. He throws in the towel. He realizes his son is more important to him than what his country thinks or his ex or whatever. And it's just such a great moment. And it's also kind of mirrors what happened with Drago and Apollo Creed, how Drago killed Creed because Rocky wouldn't throw in the towel. And yeah, it's just a great moment that really, goes back to Rocky 4. And this movie is way more about Drago and his family compared to Creed, even though we do get some Creed stuff in here. But I just always figured that this movie would end with Rocky saving Adonis, how he didn't save his father, now he gets a chance to redeem himself and save the son. But that doesn't happen. I like that little twist though, how it's really the Russians that get that. And this big end fight is incredibly important to Adonis for multiple reasons, not just because he's the heavyweight champion of the world, but also because of what happened to his father, and he feels like he can change the outcome this time around. And Victor Drago really broke Adonis in the first fight. He broke him physically, emotionally. He's in such bad shape, and he blames a lot of things on Rocky, puts all of his anger on him and his frustrations. And yeah, he just kind of gets disconnected from reality for a bit. He's lost. Plus, Adonis gets married in this flick, which is kind of cool because Rocky got married in Rocky 2. Bianca gets pregnant, but then there's a fear of his daughter being born deaf because of Bianca's condition. And I'm like, damn, that's another little emotional layer to the film. I just feel like this film had a lot more layers to it than the first Creed did. And I really like that Bianca got to perform her music as Adonis's entrance. She came out and performed with Adonis coming in. I was like, now that's cool. That's such a clever idea, especially with her being into the music biz. Why not, right? And you get that great moment at the very, very end with Rocky finally meeting his grandson, going to see his son Robert, meeting him. And it's bittersweet, I'll have to say, because It's great for Rocky. He finally gets to see his grandson and connect more with his son, but at the same time, it's the last time we see him. He's not in Creed 3, and maybe he'll never be in these movies again. So it's sad, but I'm happy for him. And that's just how good of a character he is. You feel happy for him when he's not even real. I treat him like a real person. Coming up next, at number 4, I got Rocky Balboa. And this one feels like a really personal entry for Stallone. It kind of goes back to the roots of the original with its tone and its visuals and its grounded storytelling. We get to take a trip down memory lane. We get Little Marie back in this one, which is really cool to, have more tie-ins to the original like that, and just seeing all the old buildings and kind of like the slums where he lives. And Rocky's in a weird place in his life. He lost his wife Adrian. He opened a restaurant in her honor, in her name. But yeah, he's just in a really weird place in his life at this point. He doesn't really know what to do or what to value at this point, but he feels like he's still got a little bit of gas left in the tank. So let's head to the ring. I mean, he's still very strong. He still has endurance, but he's a lot more slower than what he used to be, and he was never really fast to begin with. This is a very old Rocky, but he still has a very young heart. And I love that, his goal, again, is just to prove that he can go the distance at his age this time. And it just makes for a really incredible story. I love the whole final fight and the way it's presented. It almost feels like a real fight. Since we got like Mike Tyson that has a little cameo there, they bring up George Foreman. So it makes it feel like this is taking place in the real world. And it's very stylized, but not in like Creed 3's type of way. It still feels like a fight. But yeah, we got some black and white in there with like the color of blood, like red and different things still sticking out. I really like that. And Rocky's speech on life to his son is just so damn good, man. So inspirational. About how life will keep you down if you let it. And it's not about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and get back up, and keep going. It's just something to live by every day. Couple little nitpicks keeping this one down a tiny bit. One being Rocky's brain damage. I feel like in 5 it made it seem like it was very serious, but in this one, the committee or whatever to give him a boxing license kind of looks it over and be like, well, you pass our tests, but we still don't think you should. But I'm like, how did he pass those tests? According to the brain scans from part 5, he was in pretty bad shape, irreversible damage. So I feel like that kind of gets, forgotten for the most part. I feel like they should have dwelled a little bit more on that brain damage part, but it is what it is. And I feel like Dixon, the fighter he has to fight, is very forgettable. Like, he's just this young punk that's overconfident, but there's not a whole lot to him, and I'll probably forget about him next week. Reaching our top 3, at number 3, I got Rocky 4. Now, this is one that grows on me with every watch. Over the years, this one has been climbing my ranking slowly and slowly. It's very much a product of its time. It feels like a giant music video with a fight in there. Great kick-ass soundtrack too. I mean, we literally get a full version of Living in America by James Brown performed by him before Apollo's fight. It's like, wow. Like I said, very much a product of the 80s. It's like a larger than life music video. And Apollo's death in here is so shocking. It hits so hard, especially after all the showmanship and kind of showing off before the fight, and then he ends up dying in it. It's like, wow, did not expect that. And plus the putting Rocky through that, not letting Rocky throw in the towel, forcing him to restrain himself, and then this happening, it's very hard on the character. And this just really showed how dangerous Drago really was. He was not someone to be messed with, and it makes you fearful for when Rocky jumps into the ring with him later on in the movie. And yeah, Drago's really interesting as well, fighting for his country, with the Cold War still looming on everybody's minds, and with this big fight being America versus Russia, it just makes for a very interesting fight. And I love that Rocky says it's better for 2 people to be out there killing each other instead of 20 million people. I'm like, damn, that's a pretty good speech right there. And Dolph Lundgren was just perfect for the role. He's like a machine. and the way his character was handled by Russia, he was basically like a puppet for them to show off and be like, look who we got. He's the best. And it's just interesting, especially near the end where they start to doubt him and be like, oh shit. But yeah, the whole final fight between Drago and Rocky is epic. It's larger than life. It is just so good. Probably my favorite fight of the franchise, if I'm being honest. If not, it's up there. It's top two, whatever. It's up there. It's just so good. And like I said, it gets better with every watch. I admit it can get a bit silly at times with like Polly's robot, or just how crazy the training montages get, like with Rocky climbing mountains and, chopping wood and everything. But that's also part of its charm. It's very mid 80s, very much a product of his time, but that's kind of why I like it. Coming in at number 2, I gotta give it to Rocky 3. Now, this movie is just so fast paced, so entertaining. Every time I put it on, it just flies by. I'm never looking at the clock, that's for sure. And it really has everything to offer. It has the action. We get 3 fights in here. One of them against Hulk Hogan. And that's very fun, watching Hulk Hogan and Rocky in a ring together. And the other 2 involve Mr. T as Clubber Lang, which makes a great villain as well. And Clubber Lang's this big mouth, ignorant, tough guy who really gets under Rocky's skin, forcing him out of retirement for this one last fight, and, causing a lot of terrible situations to happen in the process. But yeah, he's great. Sometimes he's a bit one-dimensional with the way he goes on. He's more like a bully. But yeah, my biggest nitpick with him, though, is his fighting style. He never blocks. I think the only time you ever see him kind of defend himself is at the very end of the end fight. But any other time he's fighting, he's all punching. And if he gets punched, he's just never, ever, ever blocking. I'm just like, the guy could have a really hard punch, but man, he never blocks. Like, no technique at all. This movie has the emotion, with Mickey's death and everything surrounding it. How Rocky learns that Mickey was hand-picking matches for him up to this point, after his big title match, which, kind of screws with Rocky, thinking, was I really that good? But Mickey was just protecting him, and it's just so sad, Why couldn't Rocky just take Mickey's advice? But I guess we wouldn't have gotten a franchise if he would have done that. But yeah, that moment where Mickey's lying there with his eyes closed, asking Rocky, did we do it? After the fight, and Rocky's like, we did it. And it's just so sad because, Rocky's kind of lying to him. Not really lying, but he's just like, that doesn't tell him that they lost the fight, So Mickey's basically like, I can go in peace now. It's just a very hard-hitting moment. And when you lose Mickey, we lose a piece of Rocky. And also Adrian's speech on the beach to Rocky. Such a great moment. She has some great speeches in this franchise. Very underrated character. You know how she tells him, she brings it out of him, he says, I'm afraid, and she makes him discover that, the only person that he has to do this for is himself. Do it for yourself, not for anybody else or for any other reason. Just do it for you. And it just makes for a great moment. I love the training montage in this one. We get a great bromance between Apollo and Rocky here. They form a friendship where the other movies, they were rivals. But in this one, they work together. Apollo teaches Rocky some new moves, teaches him how to move his feet a bit better. We get some great running on the beach scenes, and it's very, very 80s, but I absolutely love it. Shadow boxing and everything. It's probably one of my favorite training montages of the franchise, to be honest. Apollo's just trying to get Rocky hungry again, hungry for a win, hungry for the fight. He's lost that grit. He needs to get back the eye of the tiger. And how can we talk about this movie without mentioning the soundtrack? Badass killer soundtrack, and Eye of the Tiger, one of the most iconic songs ever. And it's definitely a song that people think about when they think of Rocky. They either think of Eye of the Tiger or they think of the Rocky main theme. But yeah, it's just so good. Very adrenaline pumping. Great to work out with, so I see why it worked with this film. It's also funny that Apollo keeps mentioning that Rocky owes him a favor. And Rocky's like, what favor? The whole movie. And you're like, what the hell is he talking about? Until the very end where you see His favor was have a match behind closed doors so no one else can see to prove who really is the best. And I do like that the movie ends on that note. It's just so great. My only nitpick with this movie really is the way the main fight is choreographed. It's a bit short, and like I said, Clubber Lang doesn't really block at all, so just like every time he gets hit. That could have been done a little bit better, but besides that, this is a fantastic friggin' sequel. Obviously, my favorite sequel in the franchise. It oozes 80s and it's just so fun. But for me, easily coming into first place is Rocky, the original from 1976. It's a classic. It's such a timeless movie. Its themes and characters still are relevant today. It's a great underdog story about this nobody boxer who gets a chance of a lifetime to take on the champ to win the title. And that's a great story, but really, the heart of the story lies in its character moments, which are so good. Rocky is such a likable yet flawed character, and I feel like that's why he may be so relatable to so many people. You know, he feels real, like a real person, like someone you can meet in real life, which is hard to do in film. And his journey throughout is just so inspiring, like going from, you know, nothing, not really having anything going for him in life, to having this shot at the title and proving that he has what it takes to go the distance. And he's just a very convincing character from the way he tells stories and makes up jokes for Adrian and just kind of rambles on about his past and that. He's just like, yeah, he's very convincing. I can see how grounded this character is. Like I said, he feels like a real person. And the relationship he forms with Adrian is one of my favorite romances in all film history, and I love watching the evolution of that throughout all these films. But the journey starts here. You know, she's very shy. He kind of gets her out of her shell. And as terrible and disrespectful and mean as Paulie is in this film, especially towards his sister, you really need him here because you get a really great moment where Adrian just has enough. And, you know, she lets it all out and freaks out at Paulie, you know, comes out of her shell and just gives it to him, you know, telling her, I don't owe you nothing, and that, and it's just like, this is such a great moment. You never got to see this come out of her, you know, she was so quiet and shy, and it just, I love that moment. And all this makes the finale much more impactful and emotional, where Rocky, you know, proves he can go the distance. He may not have won the fight, but that was not the goal. And him and Adrian can share this moment at the very end, and man, does it tear on your heartstrings. And it's just, you know, one of the only movies where you don't care if the guy wins. You're just happy for him. And what else is there to say about this movie? I mean, you got the iconic score that, you know, everybody knows whether you watch the movie or not. You got the great training montages, you know, especially you get the great shot of him running up the stairs for the very first time. And all of this is just so iconic. Carl Weathers does a fantastic job as Apollo Creed. I mean, we get a fantastic end fight. It's just the whole package. This film is perfection. There's literally nothing I would change about it. It has tons of heart, and it continues to inspire people close to 50 years after its initial release. So, to me, this easily comes in the first place in this franchise. So there you have it, guys. There's my ranking of all 9 Rocky/Creed movies from worst to best. Hope you enjoyed it. Like I mentioned earlier, you can follow me on Letterboxd and Instagram. Links to those are in the description of this video. Let me know how you rank these movies from worst to best, or whichever way you want to tell me. I'm glad to have a discussion with you in the comment section. And until next time, guys, thanks for watching.